Welcome to Windows Presentation Foundation, using styles to customize WPF controls. In this brief video, I'll explain what styles are and get you started using them in your WPF applications. Simply put, a style is just a set of visual properties that can be applied to a control. These properties might include color, font size, border thickness, just about anything that's part of the visual representation of the control. There's definitely nothing new here. The concept of styles has been around forever, and you see them all the time. Some examples include styles that you'd create and use in Microsoft Word, and of course, cascading style sheets on the web. Now, I should clarify that this is just one aspect of visual customization that's provided by Windows Presentation Foundation. With styles, you can change minor characteristics of a control. Now, don't get me wrong, this can be sometimes have a very dramatic effect on your application, but you're not going to completely replace the user interface of a control. For that, WPF supports control templates, and we'll talk about that in a separate video. Now let's jump into the code. You'll see I've already fired up Visual Studio and created a WPF application. It's just a blank WPF application. The only thing I've changed is to replace the default grid with a stack panel. So I'm going to go ahead and add a text block, and we'll add some text in here, and we'll make it nice and long. And we'll see that we have a simple text block in a stack panel with the default look and feel, font, size, etc. Now, of course, we know that we can make changes to the style simply by modifying properties of the text block itself. So we can change the font size, and we can increase it to 14. And we can change the text wrapping behavior, and we can specify that it should wrap. And we can change the font family, and we can say that maybe we want to use a different font and instead of the default font. So we know that we can make those changes, but we also realize that if we decide to have additional text blocks, then we have to copy all of those values over. And if we make a change to one of the values in one of the text blocks, it only affects that text block. And so it's not very reusable. So what we'd really like to do is to define this in a way that can be reused not only on this page or this window, but maybe across our whole application. So the way that I'm going to do this is to start by creating a style, and I'll create it locally to the text block first. And at first, it's not really going to seem like it makes a whole lot of sense, but there's actually a reason for doing it this way. I'm going to, first of all, open up the text block element so that I have a opening and closing tag, and that way inside I can start to define a text block style element, and in there a style with a target type of text block. Now inside of this style element I get to start adding these property value or property value combinations that define what the style consists of. So for instance, I can specify a setter with a property of font size and a value of 14, or another setter with a property of font family. And the reason that it's nice to display or create your style just in line at first is because you get immediate feedback, right? Let's take this out so it doesn't choke on the XAML and change it to font size 18, and immediately we see the results of that change. We also get the IntelliSense here that we wouldn't get when we're defining the style. So in other words, right here I immediately know what the available options are for the text wrapping property. So I can select one and it'll autocomplete for me. Right? That's really nice as compared to down here where there could be so many possibilities in terms of the properties that it's not going to suggest a list of properties. It's simply going to expect me to know it. So I have to know that the property is text wrapping and the value is wrap. Right? So being able to copy it from a few lines above really helps speed things along in terms of defining a style. The other thing is now what we can do as we add our last property here, font family, is we can sort of make incremental changes and make sure that we've got it correct. Because the way that it's actually interpreting this now is that this style is being applied to the text block, but the individual properties are overriding the values in the style. It just so happens that they're exactly the same, right? If they aren't the same, then we're going to see it. So for instance, the font size here was 18, but the font size in the style is 14. That's a difference that we'll see when we take out font size from the text block. We immediately see that the font size shrinks because now it's taking the font size from the text block style. Okay, so we can fix that. Maybe let's compromise and go to 16. We can also take the remaining elements out, and we would expect that nothing is going to change so long as we've kept the style just the same as it was in the inline version as it was in the text block .style version. Well, what have we done really? And this is the part where I said it won't really make sense at this point, because all we've done is provide an alternate way to do the same thing, right? That we just already accomplished with less XAML. In other words, if I wanted to define multiple text blocks, I would still have to copy everything over again because they're defined just within the individual text block. So I haven't really gained anything. In fact, I've lost something simply because this is a lot more text to deal with. What I've actually gained is not so much the ability to do an inline style like this, rather the ability to easily move this, now that I've tested it, into a resource. So I can define as a child of the stackpanel.resources property, I can take this style and I can simply select and move it up into the stack panel resources. And now I can remove this, and you'll see that the style stays the same, because what I'm saying in effect is for everything in this stack panel, all the descendants of this element, we want to target any text block and we want to change its properties to match with these settings, right? So no changes have really been made. But the big sort of win here is now, even with additional text blocks, I don't have to specify anything, and it will inherit the style from the stack panel.resources. Now I can also do something if I wanted to create a situation in which you had different styles applied to different text blocks. I can give the text block a key. So we'll give this a key of, and we'll call it fancy. Now, none of or neither of the two text blocks are actually referencing that. So even though we've defined a style, now that it has a key, we're no longer using it. In order to use it, I simply provide a style property and set it to static resource, and the name is fancy. Okay. Now I've got a style that I can reuse very easily throughout this entire XAML page, this really within this stack panel. But of course sometimes we want to define styles at an even higher level because we'd like them to be visible to us across our application, right? Really, when you're creating a whole application, you might have user controls and multiple pages or different windows, and you want them all to share the same look and feel. So it would be nice if you could define styles in just one place, and you actually can very easily. And the way that you do that is in the app.xaml file. Now before I go open that up, let's go ahead and copy over this style. We'll use it sort of as to save some typing for us. We'll open up app.xaml, and in application.resources, let's paste that in, and we'll change the name. This time we'll call it, let's say, Big Blue, and we'll make some changes here, like maybe use Arial Black and font size of 24. Now that I have an application resource, anywhere in the application I can reference this, and the syntax for referencing it looks exactly like the syntax for referencing a resource when it's local. So for instance, I can copy this, and because I haven't changed the resource name, it's going to look exactly the same. But as soon as I make a change to the style and instead specify Big Blue, and I probably should make it blue, but we'll leave it there. Now I've got a 3 text blocks, one that's not getting any styling applied, so it's just getting the default, one that's using a style defined in the local stack panel, and finally one that is using a style that's using a style that's defined in the application configuration file app.xaml. And even though we in this session just looked at text blocks, of course the styling can be applied to any number of the visual controls that are available in Windows Presentation Foundation. I hope in these few minutes you have gained a better understanding of styles, and I thank you for your time.